Hello, and welcome to part 5 of the Talos Principle walkthrough. Last episode, we went through level 4 and collected all there's to offer there, and went on a bit of a tangent about robotics and space exploration. Today will be a bit less of a philosophical episode, primarily because I do not have a topic for today and want to focus exclusively on what subjects the game brings up. Let's begin. This certainly is a dreary change in scenery. Let's see what the terminal has to say. Looks like they're working on something quite nice. You might remember the little rambling I've gone on about how a citizen would best equate to a person than being with negative entropy or a human being. And now here we come to the troubling roadblock at the end of it. What happens if an artificial intelligence becomes intelligent and capable enough to participate in human politics? This doesn't go into many arguments about it, just raises a question. The only real error I could see is that it missed out a very key thing, and that's when it said businesses are given personhood, or companies are given personhood, they forgot to mention that only applies so far until they need to pay taxes. Another allusion to the game itself. Why we have to go around solving these different puzzles. And once you contemplate that question, the maker of this program, or perhaps Elohim himself, will cease to have any actual power or influence. The more I converse with these terminals, the more I wonder what role they play in this contraption. How do you tell friend from foe when no obvious lines are drawn between the two? Sheep version 69. I'm sure we'll have to ask that question later on in the game, but until now they are annoying login screens and scarce bits of text. Not exactly a conundrum. I assume that the only reason this level was named this way was just to make a little reference to Ghostbusters, since the issue of crossing streams was already exemplified in previous puzzles where these mechanics, these, I'll call them beam directors, were introduced. And in fact, this very solution of raising one on an elevated platform when both beams will cross was already figured out in the previous puzzle. just leave that there. And here we have a new entity. Unlike the other orbs, this one doesn't immediately kill you. You can take a few hits from it, but if you just corner it and keep taking hits, it will eventually force you to reset. It also poses a problem. It takes a while for those gates to open. And while there are a few times where you can sort of cheese the level and make it in just before the orb passes over, but those are pretty far, few, and in between. But at least we have this. Just like the more hostile variants, they are blocked by objects. Now, just for fun, and because I'm not sure if this will work. Oh, it does. So hypothetically, could you... Well, if you could reach it, you could place that just here and it wouldn't be able to block. Alas, that is not possible. Let's set you here, just for fun, just because I like the way it looks. Have something else to look out for. Despite having holes in the grating of the fence, the beam is not able to pass through. Well, we have a good line of vision here. If only there were some way to elevate it. And as simple as that. Though not particularly complicated on its own, like any good puzzle game, incremental bits of information will add up over time to make more complex puzzles. There's quite a few small levels here to go through. Once again, if only you were smart enough to know you're not supposed to run straight into those turrets. I think I've discerned some kind of pattern in the sigils. Each coupler serves a different purpose. Elohim has us gathering them all, but perhaps he's overzealous. Sheep version 69. A bit like how humanity is constantly trying to decipher the purpose between nature and the strange world it evolved into, so too do these robots try to discern the strange nature of this simulation they're part of. The sigils, the only real purpose they have is to collect them and the color coding, but without any extensive information, your mind will wander. We've certainly come up with many a great mythos about how the world itself operates and the reasons and purposes behind purposeless aspects of nature. Why wouldn't these robots do the same? This is necessary to get another star, and good grief, is it one of the most well-hidden things in the entire game. I believe there's supposed to be a wire or cabling running through here. Nothing wrong with the low turn off. This and this, but I will save it for later. We have a puzzle to complete. This puzzle I recall in the Let's Play by a guy called Darkside Phil. He had an extensive amount of issues with it. And while he is infamous for being bad at video games, I don't think it is particularly his fault for not understanding it immediately. This game is partially meant for trial and error and partially meant for good cognitive thinking. However, at some point you do start to feel a little embarrassed if you're not getting it. So let's read what these past robots have to say. What's a hexahedron, Samurai? A powerful device fashioned by the designer. One faith. A cube. Sheep 69. The edges are beveled. That makes it a decahedron. Always right. You forget the indents. With the indents, it's a super polyhedron. Reals T7. But the convex hull is a decahedron. Topic closed. Always right. Wrong. Though humorous as this conversation is, like a chat forum on the internet where every member is trying to outdo the other in specifics and nuance, it does give a good idea of the characteristics of some of the familiar names. Faith here is clearly super religious. He thinks of it only as a tool of the designer and thinks nothing of its actual properties. Sheep is a bit more grounded in realism, but doesn't think much of the specifics either. It's a cube, and that's as much as he needs to know. Meanwhile, Always Right, with a rather apt name, wants to show everybody off with his much more nuanced intelligence and better understanding of what a hexahedron is. But he has his contenders. For the sake of brevity and ease, I will follow Sheep's example and just call them cubes. Epitaph. Child program V8, codename Apis, terminated here. Logic failed. Apologies. Terminated here. Logic failed random memory test. Final memory dump. I try again. I cannot understand. I am not enough. Progeny programs error. Rip Apis. I suppose the devs anticipated this being a particularly difficult challenge as well, if they're having epitaphs on the walls. can see some of the other tests if you're high up enough. And there's our star, taunting us ever so. If the designer is perfect, and he designed me for a purpose, I must be fit for that purpose. It follows that my purpose must not to be to seek and hoard every sigil in his land, for so many are beyond the faculties he granted me. I do not understand why the designer chose to put such flaws into the world, that it appears almost as if it were damaged, but I must believe that there's a purpose here I cannot see. If you had any trouble garnering that Faith is a particularly religious AI, he may not dream of electric sheep, but he does seem to dream of his designer's approval, and both notes are things that are frequently echoed by the religious, much to the detriment of progress everywhere. I will continue on that later, but I want to go on a brief tangent on how I don't really like this solution to this problem. Every previous experience we had with this purple gate has told us that it is the end of the line for anything within the tests. If you need to get something from this test outside, you need to find a different way than through the gate. In fact, the first way to get one of the stars using these reflectors, you had to look up and find one on the roof of some pillar. But here, we learn that it is actually possible to extend a beam through the purple gates, thus violating everything we previously understood about them. I suppose you could say that's my only critique so far. Now, I was saying earlier, it is a common... is a fairly common belief among the religious that there are some things we simply weren't meant to know or comprehend. The farther back in history you go, the much broader that applied. Even the greatest minds of human history fell trap to it. Isaac Newton failing to decipher the orbital mechanics of planets, left it in the hands of God himself and said, "No, that's the answer it is." It wouldn't be until later when scientists a bit more youthful and a bit more vigorous and a bit more curious and have a bit more to make a name of themselves with would eventually solve that conundrum. There is a bit of an irony with Faith saying that it's not his purpose or the purpose in general to hoard every sigil there is, even though here we are going through every single test, collecting as much as we can. I wonder if that would mean that eventually we won't see Faith anymore. There's a certain amount of these sigils you have to collect in order to progress further. You need to collect a certain amount to unlock further worlds. There's certain amounts of yellow ones you need to collect in order to unlock the different assets. His bit about not understanding why the world is designed so flawed. In this case, buildings are in tatters and ruins. It's desolate and empty, and And it's raining earlier, for crying out loud. It's a conundrum for the religious, for sure. There's plenty of philosophical problems that come with it. The problem of evil, for example. Why, if God is all good and all powerful and all knowing, does he allow such travesty and hardship to be in the world? It certainly can't be to make us better in our quest throughout life, because a lot of the times our tragedies outright end our lives. I'll set this here, just so I remember it for later. Why is the human body so flawed? Why do we grow old and deteriorate? Why are we so unfit for natural birth, where before the advent of modern medicine, it was a legitimate gamble as to whether or not the child or mother would survive, and then further gambles on as to whether or not the child would survive past 5 years? The answer was that we're born into sin, and it's all because we brought it into the world. But I find that to be a very poor cop-out, an ad hoc reasoning, especially in light of what we understand about evolution. Let's see what Alexandra has to say.
I was in school when I first read about the Talos Principle. I think it disturbed me at the time, made me hyper-aware of my body as a physical object, the material reality of the brain, ideas that made me uncomfortable at first, but I think in the long run, it helped me understand how frail human beings are, and how precious. It's not a comforting way of thinking about the world, but I'd rather face the truth than lie to myself.
My thoughts exactly. I don't think that human beings will be shitty and frail forever. The more we operate in modern society, even though our bodies are unaccustomed to the very different lifestyle than the hunter-gatherer life we lived while evolving or doing most of our evolution legwork, we will eventually find a way to better ourselves through scientific means. But as of now, it is a very uncomfortable truth that we are just ghosts in a shell per se. Fleshy automaton operated by a fleshy motherboard. And when that fleshy motherboard ceases to function, game over. If the Talos Principle doesn't give you that feeling of existential dread, there are plenty of other media that would do so. Soma, a game that I've mentioned, touches on the various philosophies and questions that the Talos Principle does, is a lot better at giving you that feeling of dread, primarily because it's a horror game, and that's what horror games are supposed to do. They make you fear for your life, make you scared, that primal instinct, but rather than any predator or monster, though there are those in the game, it's that lingering feeling that comes well after you read it or play it. When you put the game or movie or book down and live on the rest of your life, and then late one night you can't sleep, your mind wanders, and you think back to what those characters said and what they went through, about how, what is death? What is the nothingness, the void you go through when you die for the rest of time? Seems this thing is very insistent on us talking to it again. You have received a reply to your support ticket. Display reply? Sure, let's get some access. You have got to be shitting me. How is it that even in the simulation, computers are the most finicky bastards of all? Well, I want to complain. I want to complain to the administrator. Well, isn't that something? Can I create a new account? I'll go through the questions again and hopefully not have to ramble on too long. Yes, I'd like to have full access to the machine. Your issues with denial will be appended. Apologies. Your issue with denial will be appended to your user profile. Further attempts to overwrite certification results will be logged. You will receive a notification if your attention is required. And alas, nothing new under the sun. It seems we've exhausted everything there is to see here, and had another riveting little ramble about a subject tangibly related to the game, with nothing else to do, and because my throat is getting rather clogged up, which I feel is lowering the quality of the commentary. I suppose we'll just end it here, satisfied we've collected every item, and turn our heads toward level 6, where the red sigils now outnumber the green. Until next time, thanks for watching.